So only for his involvement in the passing game. And we saw last week, it was crazy how quickly Matt Nagy changed his approach with the backfield, getting Montgomery 21 carries, a majority share of the backfield touches. And now Ingram, it's a good spot, but I don't know if the running game is what you pick on in this matchup against the Chiefs.
The Chiefs are 6.5-point home favorites, like we alluded to. In a lot of cases, going with the starting running back in that spot might not be as advisable, Ian.
I'm still going Mark Ingram here. And look, it was good to see Montgomery get that number 1 spot in the Bears' backfield. The problem is that it's now a 3-headed backfield. The Tariq Cohen slot receiver experiment is over. So he's still going to be involved. Hopefully Mike Davis just gets out of the picture sooner rather than later, and we can just attack Montgomery and Cohen. But I still think it's just a little too crowded in the Bears' offense that has done nothing.
It's a difficult question to have, though, because you have the Ravens, who most likely will be working from negative game script, and the Bears will most likely be working from positive game script.
I'm not convinced that Justice Hill is he's awesome, but I don't think he's just their outright pass down back. Mark Ingram is so good in pass protection.
Right.
Look, I don't see, even if the Ravens get down, I don't see them completely just abandoning their game plan and just, no longer run the ball.
Let's answer one more question, then we'll hit our core 4 games, at least the first one. Reese Fletcher, he has the Kansas City stacked to the max. Darwin Thompson, Mecole Hardman, or Demarcus Robinson in half-point PPR. So this is basically asking who's going to be the one to get that production this week, Mecole Hardman or Demarcus Robinson.
I think it's Hardman's the safer one.
Why?
Because, he had 2 touchdowns technically just like Demarcus Robinson last week. And his skill set is better for Patrick Mahomes. Like Demarcus Robinson was consistent over the final 3 weeks without Sammy Watkins last year, did score 3 consecutive touchdowns. But I think it's Hardman still they look to feature downfield, not really Robinson. Robinson's still a great play, and both of them have floors that are worrisome, but I think it's Hardman is safer.
I'm a Dale here. Everything we saw last week, it seemed like Hardman is the guy they're scheming the plays for. Like he's going to be the number 1 option on the deep shots. Robinson can get his. Anyone can get theirs, and an offense is good. But I go Hardman.
They're so hard to choose from. All 3 of them, Watkins included.
It's probably the career game that that wide receiver's coming off of, right? And Mecole Hardman still has his, most likely. Demarcus Robinson had his last week. Mecole Hardman might have his this week. All right, I had the Bengals on the mind, so let's hit them in our first core 4 game of the weekend. First, let's start on the Bengals side. A lot of people are still concerned, me included, about starting John Ross each and every week because we think the points might be fluky. Are you now comfortable starting them, Ian?
The points have been fluky, but the targets have not. I mean, he's one of only 16 receivers with 20 targets this year. I just hate this spot. I mean, if you go back to week 1 of last season, the Bills have only allowed 181 passing yards per game. I mean, the number 2 team's well over 200. So truly, this Bills secondary is not a unit you want to mess with, particularly when they're playing in Buffalo.
It is a terrible, terrible spot, like you said. Especially with Tre'Davious White, that Bills secondary known to shut down opposing wide receivers, number 1s. And Tyler Boyd works from the slot, so John Ross is technically the deep number 1, like their downfield guy. And that's the one they shut down.
They will be chasing points in this one, most likely.
Yes.
They're 6.5. They're 6-point dogs, just expected to score almost 19 points, 43.5 total. I mean,
it's a brutal spot.
There is, and it's a brutal slate because it's an unknown. So, where would you be comfortable starting John Ross? Is a wide receiver 3 flex play?
Yeah, wide receiver 3. I mean, we saw last week they were down 41-10 with a minute left in the game, and he was still out there getting fed from Andy Dalton. So he's going to get his targets, and when the guy is that fast, 4'2", 240, he can take it in the house.
With the offensive line injuries, Cordy Glenn being out, Michael Jordan being out, and you don't have to get the ball out of his hands extremely quick.
You just ask yourself, when do you consider him luck boxing a touchdown in the 4th quarter over the other guys you're thinking about starting over him?
Yeah.
So I would say wide receiver 31, fringe, borderline WR3.
Let's kick it to the other side with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, I started the show mentioning all those backups that are now starting quarterbacks, so a lot of people are looking for quarterbacks. I think this is an easy question and an easy answer, but Daigle, is Josh Allen the best streaming quarterback this week?
It is. I believe he was 60% owned in Yahoo leagues. And he just shouldn't be. He's a QB1. His rushing floor alone, 8.5 attempts so far in 2019. It's such a safe play. Even if he's miserable, he can save production week in and week out with his legs.
Ian, have you liked what you've seen from Josh Allen so far? Because when I watch him, I see someone that still has his flaws, but he's being more consistent with his strong aspects, strong attributes. And that's really all we can ask for with someone who doesn't mind making mistakes and will still run and test vertically down the field.
Look, we know quarterbacks usually make a big jump from year 1 to year 2. We've seen that. They finally put some talent around him, having Smokey Brown, Cole Beasley. That's helped. And he makes a play or two a game where he looks like this world beater Patrick Mahomes type talent. Now, I'm not saying we need to crown him just yet as a great NFL quarterback, but in fantasy, it's time to fire this guy up as a weekly QB1. He had his injury last year, I think it was elbow, where he came back in week 12. Since week 12 of last season through these first 2 weeks, only Mahomes and Deshaun Watson are averaging more fantasy points per game.
Again, get in your Twitch questions, and one final point on the Bills. It's really turned into a very narrow offense with all these injuries. Frank Gore, Cole Beasley, John Brown, Josh Allen, and that's it.
TJ Yeldon will fill in for Devin Singletary. I just don't think the way Josh Allen plays, Yeldon gets most usage in the passing game.
It's just all Cole Beasley underneath or John Brown vertically. All right, C. Gabler, lots of Mecole Hardman questions, which we absolutely love. We love those high variance players that play in really good offenses because they will hit at some point.
Also makes them tough to start.
Yeah, Marvin Jones or Mecole Hardman. I think that this is a case. We know that the Lions have Kenny Galladay and that he's being fed, and if not, it might be Danny Amendola or T.J. Hawkinson. That this is a case I feel strongly to start Mecole Hardman.
Yes. I don't know about strongly, but I definitely lean that way as Mecole Hardman.
All right. I feel strongly.
Another YouTube question. TK Cooner asks Peyton Barber or Josh Jacobs. I know Josh Jacobs was hobbled throughout the week.
And it's a bad matchup. But it's Josh Jacobs.
But it's Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, it's Josh Jacobs.
But Ian, it's a bit concerning that he's barely been used in the passing game so far.
It is. I mean, that was the big takeaway from last week entering that matchup. We were wondering, look, we've seen him run the ball. He's awesome with the ball in his hands in the run game, but Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington just have more targets at this point. And, Jacobs' one target, he caught it downfield, split a couple defenders. He can definitely do it in the passing game, but it does seem like they're not going to let him be that consistent receiver. And when you're going to Minnesota playing that great defense, you got to fire him up over Peyton Barber, but, I definitely don't want much tournament exposure to him.
And maybe it doesn't matter at all, but his groin and illness caused him to lose 10 pounds throughout the week. Like I said, maybe it doesn't matter at all, but it seems like something that should be factored in.
It's not great.
But Jacobs over Barber anyway.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mason football. Who do you start, James Conner or Devontae Freeman? We know that James Conner is on the road as 6.5-point dogs with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, but we also know that Devontae Freeman and that Atlanta rushing game has gotten nothing going so far.
The answer is James Conner, but it is truly now or never for Devontae Freeman.
And it's been never for me this season, by the way. As a major advocate for Devontae Freeman,
I'm still in.
It's never gotten going
I'm
for me
still
this year.
in, but 1 yard after contact is worrisome. That's the equivalent of falling down and just stretching the ball out, like doing the Superman.
It's not a good combination when there have been offensive line injuries after investing in the offensive line. Plus, maybe the talent has sharply declined in Devontae Freeman's case.
But now against the Colts, it's third most fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. No Darius Leonard, which is a huge deal, which is why the over is a good bet. And they're receiving the Colts to running backs is, I believe, 2 touchdowns allowed thus far, 10 receptions, 117 yards. So it's a great spot. I don't know what happens.
Do you agree?
If Freeman can't get it going this week, I don't know when he's going to.
And it will be never. Again, I've been told that Twitch chat is absolutely blowing up. Thank you, by the way. And if you like what you're seeing,
we're just going to start 15 minutes late every weekend.
And the advice, hit that follow button on Twitch, by the way. Okay, DJ Q-Tip. Pick 2 from these. Again, pick 2. Matt Breida, Christian Kirk, Curtis Samuel, or Miles Sanders. I'll give my 2 cents and then allow you to think. I will go Matt Breida and Christian Kirk. I love Curtis Samuel in terms of his air yards he's leaving on the field. I love the opportunity that we think Miles Sanders can have, but for easy start week to week, Matt Breida, Christian Kirk.
I lean Breida and Kirk as well. Breida for sure. It's a toss-up between Kirk and Samuel. I think that's why Ian's going to go Samuel. I know for sure. But I go Kirk over Samuel. Close though.
So Arizona throws the ball so much that we're seeing Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald get legit wide receiver 1 volume. 2 of those 16 guys with at least 20 targets. Yeah, I'm going Curtis Samuel this week, though. The guy's getting the ball out.
Do it.
I love it.
This is this week.
All right, next core 4 matchup is probably the best game of the weekend, and that is the Ravens at the Chiefs. I have the totals here. 55-point total between the two. Again, Kansas City is 6.5-point home favorites. Let's go a little bit quick here with Marquise Brown on the Ravens side. He's only played 42% of the snaps so far this season, Ian, but from a points and production standpoint, it kind of seems like he's a must start. Are you putting him there despite just that low snap percentage?
Definitely, and we saw a snap spike in week 2 and from 18% week 1 to 65% last week. I mean, he was the highest used non-offensive lineman or Lamar Jackson player in that offense. And yeah, I thought, going in, he was kind of be this high variance boom bust guy because of the downfield shots and just getting those every week is tough, but they're feeding him crossers, they're
Yep.
feeding him screens. This guy is agile with the ball in his hands, and he's going to keep making plays.
I assume both offenses will be at full speed despite the treacherous 13-mile-an-hour winds and hellacious raindrops that are falling down.
So there's nothing.
There's
Basically,
absolutely nothing to worry
People
about.
were concerned about the weather. Do not be concerned about the
Don't
weather
worry about it.
in this matchup. I've loved watching Marquise Brown blossom, though, in the first 2 weeks, and I think this game can only grow. All right.
The Ravens, by the way, not to
Yeah.
cut you off, but the Ravens have quietly allowed, it's very early in the season, so context, but have allowed over 10 yards an attempt to 11 personnel. And that's how we know the Chiefs are going to attack, via 3 wide receivers in the field.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just, Mahomes is the quarterback one anyways, but it's really like a Mahomes even further blow-up spot.
Well, let's talk about Mahomes quickly and maybe rank the 1 or 2 options you like outside of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Sammy Watkins, because, again, those are plug-and-play starters. We have DeMarcus Robinson, you have Mecole Hardman. We've gotten barely any questions about LaShawn McCoy when he should see the bulk of the work.
I would consider McCoy an RB3. He warmed up. He's active. Even his warm-up videos, he was hobbled, though. He did not look full speed. Darwin Thompson, like I said, I genuinely believe Daryl Williams gets involved in early down reps. But Darwin Thompson is still the more valuable option because of his passing game usage. Explosive in the passing game.
If someone has Alexander Madison or Justice Hill on the end of their bench, would you do like an exploratory ad with Darwin Thompson right now in leagues?
I would over Justice Hill. Darwin Thompson should kind of be owned anyways, honestly. But Alexander Madison, that's a tough one. That's a tough.
Because both are blow-up spots if they get the starting running backs.
Yeah.
What about you? Outside of Kelce, Mahomes, Watkins, who do you like most?
I think it's Hardman as the number 1 guy, and we talked about him. But look, I do have one concern about this run game. They ran for 31 yards and 22 carries last week against the Raiders, and the one thing that kind of points out is their left tackle, Eric Fisher, was out that game. He played like 2 snaps. And
he's out again.
He's going to miss like 4 to 6 weeks. So, we always talk about running backs don't matter. It's offensive line play matters. Well, the offensive line play hasn't been great in Kansas City.
A little selfish question here. Would you start Mecole Hardman or John Ross today?
I go Hardman.
Would you really go for the long shot? But I guess both are high variance.
Yeah, I mean, Hardman is the better matchup.
Wow. Okay.
It is high variance, though.
I have to change that one. I also want to point you to our DFS toolkit. If you're looking for an added edge and you play DFS, use our lineup optimizer to come up with winning lineups for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. Just go to rotoworld.com/DFS, and these 2 guys put some content there each week on the season
Just
pass
a little bit.
and the DFS
Just every day
toolkit.
of our lives.
All right, let's now answer more viewer questions. A lot coming in from Twitch still. Let's go to Sherwing. I'm not going to say the rest of your name. Kerryon Johnson or LaShawn McCoy. We were just talking about the Chiefs in full-point PPR. This should be the Kerryon Johnson game if there ever was one.
Carry-on season for sure. I mean, C.J. Anderson, gone. Ty Johnson is going to still be involved. Like, we're not going to see Kerryon get up to 80% snaps or anything ridiculous like that, even if he's talented enough to deserve it. But a guy that's only been 55% snap rate, he can absolutely go 60, 65, which is kind of what we're seeing throughout the rest of the league anyway. So definitely carry on.
We need to monitor his usage on 3rd down, but either way, he's in a much better position than he was earlier this week before C.J. Anderson was released.
DeSandman is struggling at running back. Justin Jackson, Malcolm Brown, or C.J. Procise in full-point PPR. I'm assuming he's throwing Procise in there because Rashad Penny is most likely not going to play. Malcolm Brown, we know he might get some goal line work. He might get 10-plus touches, and they're on the road as favorites against the Cleveland Browns in Sunday Night Football, game we'll talk about in a moment.
The Rams are missing right guard Austin Blythe, but even so, this
Probably
matchup...
they are.
Most likely. Even so, this matchup, coupled with Goff's woesome road splits, sort of spell Gurley and Malcolm Brown being involved heavily. And I think it's a good situation that Gurley's snap rate declined in week 2 as they slowly continue to back off and ease them in only when the game needs to be.
And another major benefit of that running game is that Christian Kirksey's out for the Cleveland Browns as well at linebacker.
I'm going Justin Jackson here, though. Kind of lost in the Austin Eckler. Look, Eckler's played great, but Justin Jackson, league high 8.9 yards per carry, and that was with like a 65-yard touchdown last week called back. I mean, the guy's been incredibly efficient on the ground. No, he's not getting the fantasy-friendly targets that Eckler's been getting, but, out of those 3, I'm taking Justin Jackson.
One Genetics. Your names.
Fair.
Start both Kittle and Mark Andrews, or should I flex in LaShawn McCoy? I'm kind of in favor with how this slate and the season has started off with a lot of 2 tight ends because in a lot of situations it has worked out. But we know that Mark Andrews was hobbled this week. So it's basically Andrews or LaShawn McCoy.
Was 50-50 coming into the game. I still lean Andrews in that spot. I think he's safer of the 50-50 options you got going on there.
I'm Andrews as well. Andrews and Kittle, yes, they're tight ends, but they are the number one receiver in their offense, so I'm fine playing both.
Let's not go overboard here, but Reed6450 asks Marquise Hollywood Brown or Chris Godwin. We're still going with Chris Godwin.
We are still going Chris Godwin.
Godwin.
But that's
Even though if you can't squeeze Marquise Brown in your roster, that sucks to see him on the bench.
Yeah.
But, yes, you go Chris Godwin.
Take you Chiha. Man, I need to read over these
they're just
names
making this hard on you.
before I actually read them out loud to practice them in my head. Need 2 of these. Again, start 2 of these. Nelson Aguilar, Julian Edelman, Curtis Samuel, or Demarcus Robinson. We know that Edelman is locked in as a starter in that half-point PPR. So one of these 3, Aguilar, Curtis Samuel, or Demarcus Robinson.
I hate to see Demarcus Robinson on the bench, but it is Edelman for sure, as Ian mentioned earlier, his uptick in targets, sans James White, and Curtis Samuel for me, who I'm not worried about Carolina's production with Kyle Allen under center at all.
Curtis Samuel should have had 150-plus yards and multiple touchdowns last week. They're coming this week.
Okay, let's now move to the third of the core 4 games. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers at the San Francisco 49ers. Again, 49ers are 6.5-point home favorites. 2-0, a very frisky team here. John
Frisky
Daigle,
indeed.
possibly being 3-0. Let's start in Pittsburgh sides. What's the trickle down at wide receiver here with Mason Rudolph now as the starting quarterback? Because just from my unprofessional eyes, it certainly looked like the Steelers' offense was more productive, was benefited greatly when Mason Rudolph stepped in for Ben Roethlisberger last week.
James Washington is the all-too-obvious pickup of the week. One of them, given his 4,000 yards from Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State.
Yep.
He's going to, what I assume, will be coming to this offense and just immediately click right from the get-go. That's why the Steelers were a frisky 6.5-point underdog. And then the one thing we're not mentioning here that should allow the Steelers to click and continue to keep up with the Niners offense is that they are missing their left tackle. But we'll talk about that in a second.
So the one thing that worries me is, Steelers did look good when Rudolph came in, but, we're kind of accepting that like they're going to just be great moving forward, whereas Teddy Bridgewater didn't look good, and now we're saying, oh, no, but that was just, a half. He just got thrown in there. So it seems like we're...
Thanks for calling all of us out, Ian.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know that we're necessarily going to see 2 high-end fantasy wide receivers in Pittsburgh moving forward. I still think Juju's a high-end wide receiver, too. I mean, he still gets those downfield targets. Hasn't been the easiest first 2 spots for him with his quarterback going down week 2, Stephon Gilmore in week 1. I think we see Juju get back on track as the high-end wide receiver that he is.
Well, you say still, though, and I would say he was wide receiver 1, and then this makes him a high-end wide receiver 2. But if people are concerned about him being a high-end wide receiver 2, they shouldn't be, because that's what he will be the rest of the year.
Fair.
I can kind of see Deontay Johnson blow up in the next few weeks.
They used him in first string at OTAs and camp.
Yeah.
They are very high on him.
Let's quickly go to the San Francisco 49ers side. How many 49ers are you comfortable starting? Because we know Kyle Shanahan has been on absolute fire. George Kittle, fantastic. And then the running backs have been great. But the wide receivers is really where the question
So let's
is.
count them together.
Kittle,
George Kittle.
Matt Breida.
Mostert.
That's it.
I'd be, Deebo Samuel flex. I don't know if that's confidence, but 4?
So Mostert is must start.
Yes.
Okay.
I say he's a can
Yes.
start.
That was a joke. I mean, you didn't have to think about it too hard.
I wanted to think where I had him ranked. Well, don't ask me questions I can't think about.
I'd say he's a can start, but
Okay.
Deebo Samuel is the one that I'm interested in, especially moving forward. I know the snaps haven't quite been there, but still the second most targeted guy in the team. They've been getting him a rush attempt almost like every single game. I mean, if you watch Kyle Shanahan last week and some of the things he schemed up, I mean, he's doing better than ever, and Deebo is one of those guys that he wants to get the ball to in space.
Yeah. Deebo had an interesting week, like manufactured touches, and then if he gives you more than that, then that's a major, major benefit.
Right.
Poppable wants us more to talk about Miles Sanders. Like, Miles Sanders is a conundrum for a lot of people because he was selected as like a running back 2 for a lot of people. Is it now we're just waiting for the production to match the opportunity? Because he finally did last week, I believe, see the most snaps out of that backfield.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I mean, only like last week, I kind of thought Darren Sproles would just really get all those targets instead of Sanders, but their routes were within like 1 or 2 of each other. They are confident using Sanders as that 3-down, not quite bell count because it's still a Doug Peterson offense where he's going to be around that 50% snap rate. But as a home favorite in a matchup that I think they can win, in the trenches, fire him up.
They know he is their best option. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is the week he comes out, especially even though the Lions are missing Deshaun Hannon in the middle of their trenches, but they do get Gerard Davis back in the middle of the field. I don't know if this is the week, but they will continue feeding him because he needs. It's almost like he's learning the position again.
Yeah.
As you've seen when you watch him, he bounces outside.
He's the king of the jump cut.
Yeah, entirely too much, and he's noticing it's not working in the NFL. When he learns, it's just a matter of how quickly he's going to learn.
And we always glowingly talk about the Philadelphia Eagles offense. In the running game, they haven't been good. Like Isaac Seumalo was just completely destroyed last week against Grady Jarrett.
Couldn't you see a more enhanced emphasis on the run game now that your top 2 receivers are out too?
And 6.5-point home favorites.
pivot,
I think it's a good time for Miles Sanders. And a banana 13. I'm playing
pronounce
against,
that one.
I'm against my brother today, crying emoji. Josh Allen or Matt Ryan. Again, they possible streaming quarterback. Or do you want to go with Matt Ryan, who had an up and down week in their road dogs?
Without Darius Leonard, I think that game is a shootout, and I'm trying to get a lot of pieces in it. It's a sneaky shootout, but I lean Ryan over Allen, despite loving Josh Allen this week.
I had the same decision in one of my season-long leagues. I'm going with Josh Allen. And the one thing the Colts do really well on defense is prevent big plays. Most zone-heavy defense in the league, they kind of give up the underneath stuff a lot, similar to the Falcons, actually, the way they kind of run things with Dan Quinn. But, I just think Josh Allen's rushing upside is too high.
Zombie pandemic. Does Rex Burkhead do well with James White out? We don't know. We don't know what Bill Belichick's going to decide. I could see Damian Harris seeing all the snaps that James White saw. I could also see Rex Burkhead seeing 50% of the backfield touches in this game. I have no idea.
I got to be nice because Trisha, our audio director, is a Jets fan. But I will say Burkhead was playing 35% of the snaps. Now, no James White. Burkhead, I would assume, plays 40% of the snaps. But as you said,
we have no idea.
Damian Harris is also active for the first time this year. And in a game that the Patriots are favored by 23 points, we don't know. We really don't know.
Let's go to Van Glees, Kenny Galladay, or Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has also been a non-starter so far this season. 6-point road dogs with just a team point total of under 19 points. We talked about all the offensive line injuries. Meanwhile, Detroit has actually impressed offensively so far this year, especially Kenny Galladay.
I'm firing up Kenny Galladay. I mean, look, the Eagles were the worst team in the league last year in terms of yards per game, #1 wide receivers. They didn't change anyone at cornerback because they had a ton of injuries last year. Well, now the injuries aren't an issue, and we've still seen Terry McLaurin, Julio Jones go off in these first 2 weeks. I think Kenny Galladay keeps the streak going.
Ronald Darby was smoked last week by Calvin Ridley. And now he gets Kenny Galladay, who runs 70% of his routes from the left side where Darby plays. It is a blow-up top 5 week for Kenny Galladay.
We're going to go till 12:55 today because we started late just for all of you. We appreciate it. And hit that follow button while you're there. Io Manu, DJ Moore, or Mike Williams. We talked about Curtis Samuel a lot today, and you mentioned how with the Panthers wide receivers, they're not going to get worse quarterback play most likely. We think Kyle Allen is maybe the most confident in his ability, and we know DJ Moore succeeding on a lot of the slants and crossers that he's running. Then you have Mike Williams, who really hasn't been able to get it going so far this season.
I think it's a very close call. DJ has a higher floor because of just the way he's used on slants and more high percentage routes. But Mike Williams, the guy was playing limited snaps last week, but whenever he got in, like Phillip Rivers was just tossing him end zone targets. We should not underestimate how big of a factor Mike Williams is going to be in the red zone with Hunter Henry out. So I think I'd actually lean Mike Williams in this spot.
I think I agree with Ian.
And the Texans secondary is like a massive question mark.
Trash.
Yes.
That's putting it nicely.
I'd lean with Ian.
Let's close out with, the core 4 games with the LA Rams, I should say, at the Cleveland Browns. Okay. Are you starting Todd Gurley and Jared Goff on the road with confidence? Because we've talked about how Goff is so much better at home. Todd Gurley, he's seeing more of a workload. He saw more goal line carries last week, but they are 3-point favorites with an expected point total of 26.5 for the team.
I'm worried about Goff more than I am Gurley. I mean, last week kind of re-emphasize that, look, Brown and Gurley are not these, like, one's not a pass down back and one's the short down back. No, it seems like Gurley just pretty much plays 2 series and then Brown comes in, plays 1, and then Gurley goes back out for 2. They're being used very similarly when they're on the field. Just week 1, Brown happened to be on the field when they were closer to the goal line. So I'm still firing up Gurley as, the lead back playing 65% snaps and a good offense, but Goff, man, when you're getting no rushing upside with him and this offensive line isn't giving him all day to sit back anymore, it's a problem.
That's been a big change because Andrew Whitworth probably had his worst game of his career last weekend, And we know that the Cleveland Browns with Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, Larry Ogunjobi up the middle have a lot of talent to put Goff out of his structure, and he's just not good outside of structure.
That's the thing. The Browns are missing 2 starting safeties and shutdown corner Denzel Ward.
That's true.
But do they actually find time for Goff? That's a huge question mark to get downfield, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's this dichotomy of, hey, they're missing these corners, and Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams has been hobbled all week. So do you play all the Rams wide receivers, or are you nervous about the pass rush against the
And
offensive
I'm nervous because Goff has clearly been bad outside of L.A.
The one guy I'm not nervous about in the passing game, though, Gerald Everett, the new undisputed starting tight end with Tyler Higbee out.
Baker Mayfield has 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions so far
And
this
has looked
season.
miserable.
Again, they're at home, but 3-point dogs at home. What's going on? Is it wise to look elsewhere? Because a lot of people drafted Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback. Like, would you start Josh Allen over him?
I'm not looking elsewhere yet, but it's clear not only is the offensive line not doing him any favors, so there's something wrong with his arm. And I don't know what it is, but he's been off, like extremely off. When we get Rashad Higgins back, which I don't think will be this week, right? Rashad Higgins is not coming back.
I don't believe so.
Okay. When we get him
We'll just
back
say
on the
no.
field and we have 3 starting
Check
receivers for Baker, get a fact checker that we don't have to look that up. When we have all 3 starting receivers for Baker, I think it should go back to normal. But like I said, he has truly looked very, very awful.
So my biggest concern with Baker, and I've heard some people much smarter than me talk about, some of his issues have been he's been late to recognize kind of these cover 2 disguises that defensive coordinators have been throwing at him. Wade Phillips is not the defensive coordinator you want to be kind of matching up against when you're having issues with disguise coverages. So I think he figures it out. I think he's too good not to. But this week, I mean, if you have a better option as a spot starter, I say go for it.
But you're not worried about Beckham. Like, you're still starting him.
There's an all-new game for you all to play. Join the fun with the all-new Sunday Night 7 game on the NBC Sports Predictor app. It's free and easy to play. Just make 7 simple predictions about what will happen in Sunday Night Football for your chance at $2 million in guaranteed cash prizes this season. $100,000 is up for grabs in each contest. More to your questions. Again, that's where we're going to do the rest of the show, so get them in the chat room. All right, start T.Y. Hilton or Sterling Shepard. This is the first time we get to really see Sterling Shepard so far this season. He's coming back from a concussion, I believe. And T.Y. Hilton, he's still getting his points, but it's still a limited Colts offense.
Not just the first time we see Shepard, but the first time we see Daniel Jones under center as
Yes.
well. Like, now they get to play together. Having said that, I still lean Hilton in this matchup that I said has sneaky shootout potential.
I think it's easily Hilton. I mean, even if Shepard emerges as number 1 wide receiver here, which he probably will, that could easily be the 3rd most targets behind Ingram and Saquon in a given week.
And let's calm down on Daniel Jones. Like, week 1, let's at least see what's going on. So poor against pressure. Like, never had a passer rating over 67 in college against pressure. And now we're going against a Todd Bowles defense that's going to dial up pressure every chance he gets.
8 minutes left, so let's go some rapid fire. Well, a couple sentences per answer. Cody GKTA, John Ross or Josh Gordon? I know you're a big fan that Josh Gordon is back into his wide receiver 2 mold here.
It's Josh Gordon. It's not close.
Flash season for sure.
Okay. Roster profiter. Who to stash, Ito Smith or Damian Harris in a 0 running back league?
Ito Smith, because this is the game that Devontae Freeman, I believe he'll deliver today, but if he doesn't, like, it's Ito Smith coming out of nowhere in week 4.
I don't know. I'll go with Damian Harris there because I think if something happens to Sony Michel, we see Damian Harris walk right into that lead kind of early down running back role. If something happens to Devontae Freeman, I think we see Brian Hill come up and more or less form the same committee. Maybe Ito works as the lead guy, but I think there's a higher potential ceiling for Damian, even if Ito has the higher week-to-week standalone value.
And I'll put Alexander Madison over both. Okay, speaking of Sony Michel, this is from Nick Sands. Can I start Sony Michel over Sammy Watkins, Chris Godwin, or Marquise Brown? So basically, would you start Sony Michel over Hollywood Brown?
No.
Even though he might see 25 touches today?
I think I would.
I think I would too. I mean, over Marquise Brown.
Look, he has not broken a single tackle this season on 36.
It's real bad.
It's
right.
ridiculous.
It's been terrible.
But 22-point home favorite against a Jets defense that's missing C.J. Mosley and Quentin Williams. If he can't fall into the end zone a couple times this week, I don't know when he will.
But that's what you're banking on. Whereas
you're only banking on touchdowns. Like, there will be a game this season where Sony Michel scores 3 touchdowns. There also might be one where he gets 30 total yards.
I prefer just to play the matchup and go Marquise Brown in the slot against Kendall Fuller at the Chiefs.
I was super excited about Sony Michel heading into the season. I actually traded him this week for Christian Kirk and Mecole Hardman.
Good for you.
Which
You won that tree.
I think so. Don't say that too loudly. Mark Andrews or Curtis Samuel. We can play tight end as receivers. Well, that's called a flex. Okay, so Mark Andrews or Curtis Samuel. I know you're big, Ian, on Curtis Samuel today.
Yeah, it's very close. I lean Curtis because Mark Andrews, I mean, I underestimated his foot injury. He missed practice last week. They said no problem, and he'll be there.
And 100 yards, yeah.
Yeah, but this week, I mean, again, he's still on an injury report, and they made it sound like, they wanted to see how he looked in pregame warmups before making an official decision. So he's not 100%, similar to Hollywood Brown. The same snap concerns we have from Hollywood Brown that, aren't huge concerns with how involved they are, but they also exist for Mark Andrews.
I love Mark Andrews, but a wide receiver 2 is where I draw the line and starting him over, and so it's Curtis Samuel for me.
D. Dean Smith with a few names we haven't talked about. Pick 2 in standard. Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones, Adrian Peterson, or LaShawn McCoy. Well, let's annihilate Adrian Peterson from this conversation.
But we'll get the boot kick again.
Well, the thing with Aaron Jones is I believe Matt LaFleur came out this week and said he wants to split snaps evenly between Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, which is just bad
It's
advice.
suspicious only because he said it after he gave Aaron Jones all the carries.
Yeah.
Like, there was no need to say it at all. And I think it's true. I think Jamal Williams will still continue getting sprinkled in.
Who are the other 2 options?
It was the leader.
It was the first 2 first 2 were the only ones that mattered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Marlon Mack.
Marlon Mack, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Jones.
All right, this is Marlon Mack. I think Marlon Mack does see limited touches today. Maybe not limited, but we're not going to see him get over 20 carries, I don't think. The dude was carrying around a walking boot as of like Tuesday or Wednesday.
But on his shoulder.
Yes,
Which is still weird.
Was it for
we
a
need
friend?
a clarification of this. Why was he holding a walking boot?
He wasn't
Why
in
wasn't
it.
he,
He wasn't
in it
wearing it.
despite needing to wear it? I'm confused.
Mactron, Marquise Goodwin, or Devin Smith in full-point PPR. Devin Smith is most likely, we think, stepping into that Michael Gallup role, and that could be very exciting.
They only have 4 wide receivers.
Because Tavon's out too.
Yes, and that's what they're moving forward with this Sunday.
How dare we say that Tavon's out on this show?
I know. Be worried about Tavon Austin.
Spent 10 seconds
His
on
whole
him.
one catch the last 3 years of his life. I want Devin Smith. Devin Smith is like the sneakiest wide receiver 2 in this matchup in particular because he's going to get full run in the slot. We saw him on limited routes last week in place of Tavon Austin, connected on a 51-yard post route over the middle for a touchdown from Dak Prescott. Devin Smith is such an awesome wide receiver 3 this week that no one's talking about.
Go ahead.
I am a little bit concerned here. Like when you have a blowout situation, I know for players to get pulled, they need to put up points first. But in an offense like the Cowboys, where we know it's going to be Dak, Cooper, Zeke, I could see auxiliary options like Devin Smith having a little bit trickier time. So I lean towards Goodwin in a potential shootout like you were talking about.
My only thing here, though, is that Zeke is still a complementary piece in this offense. He doesn't drive the new Kellen Moore offense. It is clearly Dak's offense, which is why Zeke also hasn't been being used.
He's
in the
also getting a
passing
full
game.
workload now, according to a Rotoworld.
But full workload is 25 carries.
All right.
That's not passing
We
game
got to move on.
usage. Okay, so
Master Exploder, DK Metcalf, Nelson Aguilar, or Allen Robinson. Wide receiver 2, full-point PPR. So pick one of those. Again, DK Metcalf, Nelson Aguilar, or Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson. Not worried at all.
About Mitch Trubisky.
Not worried
being
at all
connected.
about Mitchell Trubisky. This is such
Aguilar is probably the safest one.
No.
Maybe target. I don't know. I still go Allen Robinson
Okay.
too. We're expecting shadow coverage from Josh Norman, but that's way less of an issue than Chris Harris Jr. like we saw last week.
Schwarzenegger, Tyrell Williams, or Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, or John Ross.
DK or
Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah, it's
T-Max.
probably Terry.
Scary Terry.
Scary Terry.
I mean,
We got to think of a better nickname, though.
how much Terry McLaurin has added to that offense in terms of winning vertically, winning short,
Almost
winning
as if he's
big,
better than Marquise
winning
Brown, Josh.
small. No, he's not.
Almost as if.
Rex Burkhead or Terry McLaurin. We're going with Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin's still safer.
Due to matchup, John Brown or Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders, it is wild what he is doing at like 31 years of
Leads
age.
the league in red zone targets.
But what John Brown is also doing in a perfect situation for him, and I believe they are home favorites as well, yes, by 6 points, I'm still going with John Brown.
I'm going John Brown as well. Higher touchdown equity, in my opinion.
All right, we're going to pick one more. Well, let's go here. Am I tilting for considering starting Frank Gore over Devontae Freeman in full-point PPR? That's from Tito83.
You got to go with Devontae. It's like O.J. Howard.
I don't know,
one,
dude.
one more week. Give
It
Devontae
is-
one more chance.
It is put in Devontae and don't watch the game. Just whatever you do, don't watch it.
Your tilt is warranted, and because of that, I will go with Frank Gore. All right, that's going to do it for all of us. That is Ian Hartitz. Again, check out his injury dashboard later in the week. That is John Daigle. He's at the waivers on Monday. I'll be back with a podcast actually Sunday night / Monday morning in time for your commute, so go and check out the Rotoworld Football Podcast. I'm Josh Norris. Thank you so much for being here. Same time, around the same place-ish. Next time, talk to you all soon. Have a great Sunday, everyone. See ya.